Well, hi there, everybody. It's Jeff Wellstead again. Having stumbled upon yet another diamond that I wanted to bring to your attention. Just a quick note about who it is I am, Jeff Wellstead, and the CEO and founder of Big Bear Partners, which is sort of an HR strategy consultancy. I typically have worked with lots of fast growth tech and biotech companies, but I work with companies now of all different shapes and sizes. And basically look to kind of bring people strategy to the fore. I've recently, past couple of years, as you might imagine, have fallen head over heels in love with AI and its potential applications for the human resource function, which are huge. And I finally feel like, wow, cool, we've arrived. This is the moment it's all going to take place. And interestingly, adoption in the space has been limited. As you might expect, people are very, very busy doing their day jobs and kind of doing things the way that they've always ever done them, because quite frankly, not quite sure how to replace some of this stuff. But in my never-ending quest to find examples where incredible things are happening in this space, I happened to be kind of trolling a Culture Amp Slack channel that I'm part of. And there was a section in there called AI in HR, and came across this brilliant blog article that was more than just a blog article, as some of these are typically like opinion pieces and things of that nature. It was this article shared with the wonderful Helena, who's with us today, who basically said, hey, here's how I came to kind of understand the potential use cases of AI and HR. Let me give you some examples. And she just went, I mean, she's probably going to blush when I say this, but I was just really over the moon with how fascinating the examples were, the use cases were that she shared with us. And she shared in great detail what those things were. So look, I read it with rapt attention, immediately reached out to her and said, hey, can we have a chat? Can we do sort of a live, kind of webinar, kind of thing? And you can share, your journey, to this. But without further ado, what I wanted to do is introduce Helena and kind of like have her talk about her journey to discovering AI, her journey through HR, first of all, and also to hopefully talk a little bit about the wonderful organization she's with at the moment. But then to kind of start to share with us some real use cases and talk to us about, the AI tools and so forth, and what kind of impact, which is significant, these sorts of tools and her sort of thinking will have on the HR community. So without further ado, Helena Diaz, welcome to the show. I really appreciate the show to our session, and I really appreciate your spending your precious time with us today. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for all of that. That was super nice. So I've studied business, and I've been working in companies of several sizes for many years. And I was working in business operations, specifically in process improvement. And what I always found is that I don't like repetitive tasks like many people. Everything that I could automate using tools, because I'm not a technical person. I didn't study software, so no code or extremely low code tools. And a couple of years ago, I started to be more interested in shifting to the area of people. And I've been working in people operations, focusing mostly on the areas of engagement, performance, and the people strategy, with defining this with the leadership. And yeah, since then I wanted to kind of merge these two areas, meaning I really like to think about the strategy, but I don't like as much to do the repetitive tasks still. So merge the automation potential with the people area. Yeah, and that's how now. I was using.
Yeah, which is really that journey, right? Because I mean, that's what I get so excited about is that AI potentially can immediately take away like all the junk that I hate about the HR role, and immediately potentially give us room, headspace, and technological space, frankly, to start acting in a much more strategic way. So that's super exciting.
Yeah. I think just very quickly to
Mm.
tell you where my trauma came from. My
Yeah.
first job was in auditing, and I felt that a lot of it was just spending hours at a company doing repetitive tasks, repetitive checks that were not adding any value. So I think my first job already gave me enough experience of that for a lifetime. So now I want to use all the tools possible. And now with AI, it's just extremely augmented capacities in comparison to the tools I was using before.
Nice. Good. Well, I mean, it's brilliant because I think we all get, weirdly, I started off my career at Arthur Andersen in the tax
Okay.
department in New York and was like, I couldn't have picked possibly a worse sector to match, kind of my free spirit, my creative thinking and things of that nature. There wasn't, well, there was some creative thinking, unfortunately, in the tax regime there. But I guess that's why folks pay firms like that the big bucks. But yeah, I totally understand. I mean, 99% of what I did there as an HR professional easily could have been done by AI, and
Yeah.
probably much better. Um, but anyway, as things have evolved, there are sort of like all sorts of interesting opportunities if, in fact, we can A, get rid of the stuff that we can automate, B, kind of like engage with concepts like skills-based organizations and kind of like creating data layers that we can then apply AI to excuse me, take us to the next several levels of commercial relevance, within the organization. That's really kind of what I was always ever fighting for, is that I could see how the business could be better. And I knew the people I was looking after, but I mean, that's not good enough, right? I mean, that's not just having that information up here isn't necessarily going to create the powerful data insights that are really kind of going to drive the sort of commercial decisions about the direction of a company, what products they ought to go build, what geographies they should be in, what mergers and acquisitions activities they should engage in, and all of that typically driven quite powerfully by the fascinating knowledge about who knows what about what, and how do we then potentially apply those wonderful assets to these incredible challenges. So yeah, with that, thank you for your introduction. I appreciate that. You're very, very humble. You've had a really interesting career, at your current company. You've kind of, to your point, you kind of made your way through, a variety of different kind of approaches to things, whereby you kind of started off at a relatively, kind of low level in the organization and kind of worked your way up. You were a grants manager, and then basically you got yourself, after 11 months, into a people operations role as a manager. And now you're the head of people operations. So you must be good at, because you were only there for a year and then suddenly you got promoted to that. So obviously you're doing something right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's fascinating. Just out of, excuse me, out of curiosity, are you applying any kind of AI related tooling to the current role that you're doing with Effective Ventures?
Yeah, mostly from the point of view of research and as a thought partner, I use this a lot because at this level I don't have as many tasks that are repetitive. So it's mostly for research, and yeah, whenever I think about some strategic initiative, I use ChatGPT kind of like as a thought partner. That's the main one that I use.
So, and that's interesting, right? Because I'm always ever fascinated about how people came to understand AI and the use of it. You strike me as the kind of person who likes to explore, likes to experiment,
Yeah.
who appreciates and likes to embrace a bit of technology, right, along the way. To your point, to kind of get the ugly, boring, repetitive stuff out of the way for sure. But this is sort of like next level stuff. What was sort of your personal journey of discovery, if you will, with AI, and how did it kind of evolve to this point?
So I think like I actually mentioned that in the blog post. In when ChatGPT first appeared, I started to use it just for fun, create poems, create these kind of things, and then very quickly I understood that I could actually use it for more interesting use cases for my work. And as the model for appeared, that proved to be true. And now with all of these applications, this ecosystem, for instance, the one that I talk in the blog post is a prompt engineering tool, which takes ChatGPT in this case, but you can use also other models, I'm going to show it later. So
We're gonna
yeah.
have some fun with it. Yep.
And yeah, just improve more and more of your workflow. As I said, now with this recent position that I'm in, I don't have a lot of these repetitive tasks anymore. But I still find AI extremely useful for my day-to-day.
Very cool. And I love that notion of using it as an inspiration tool.
Yeah.
That was very much my own, excuse me, my own experience with it, which is, to your point, you kind of get on and you're like, have a play. It's like, okay, write a limerick using Shakespearean sonnet structure, you know what I mean, about snails or something weird like that. And you were just like blown away by what this thing was actually able to do. And then, yeah, I got a little bit more serious about it. And I was like, well, can this thing do crazy stuff like write a book for me? You know, and the answer, of course, was
Yeah.
no. It did line to me and said that it would be working on this book for 3 months and have a full completed copy by May. And I was like, no, you won't. This will never happen again. But then I started to use it, and we'll talk a little bit about prompt engineering because this is really quite fascinating. Sounds super, super technical, but it's actually a fascinating kind of natural language, you know, kind of concept, and we'll get people to understand how that works. And I started to kind of, the thing I hate about writing, I love writing once I'm in the flow, but what I hate is starting the writing, right? That's always ever when I kind of feel like I'm staring at my screen until my forehead bleeds. And I'm sort of like, I'm still not feeling it. I'm not happy with anything I started with. And it just, you know, you have the proverbial wrinkled paper, you know, piling up around a dustbin. And you're sort of like really frustrated by it. But then having a bit of, you know, fun to kind of just say, hey, computer, you know, yeah, I need you to kind of behave in a particular way or know a particular, you know, kind of knowledge set to help kind of aim it in the right direction. But this is kind of what I'm looking for. And that was always ever fascinating was I felt like I was becoming a coder, you know, like I had to tell the computer and mansplain to the computer everything I wanted to know. And I'd write these like ridiculous page-long prompts, right? Which clearly failed miserably. And I was watching other people kind of illustrate, you know, the use of you know, Chat GPT and, you know, and the different tools out there, Claude and all that kind of stuff. And they were like, they weren't kind of doing things nearly so specifically. They were just sort of saying, hey, I'm doing a bit of research on this and I kind of love your thoughts on that. And I'd love you to present it in this particular format. And then just seeing what happened. And the magic was the iterative process, right? It's the notion that you can kind of keep a string of conversation going around this whole thing. And I was like, whoa, this is wicked. And suddenly my brain was like, I'll never have to talk to another human again. I'm just going to hang out.
Replaces therapy. No, I'm kidding.
Like, right. Exactly right. Be careful what you wish for, right? It's probably in 5 years' time that'll be the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you could do, I would, you know, I'd love the fact that, you know, you explored in this space and what you shared was next level, right? And that's why I was so blown away. I was like, whoa, I've got to get to meet this person and find out more about this. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind kind of taking us on a bit of a journey, you know, with how does you discover this, kind of recreating your blog in a way, which of course, when we publish this, we'll make sure that we have a link to it. But yeah, that would be super helpful. And I've made sure that we can share screen here. So
Sure thing. Just one thing that I would like to add to your point. One thing that I like to do now, whenever I do some research or I have a document, I always like to ask AI to criticize it. I found that really valuable to find while my thinking is failing, and I really always get good points from it. And the other thing that I like, especially when I write things for like the leadership, is to ask it to rewrite it. Do you know like the pyramid principle, the book? Where you have the headline first, to rewrite it in that style, because especially being non-native, I always find it really valuable to have it written in a more like structured approach that goes to the point. So yeah, these are
that's
like
really
two
useful. And
use cases too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. And you might, if you don't mind, kind of educate us all about what this notion of prompt engineering is and how is it, because there is a particular structure, right, that we're meant to kind of engage the AI tools with. But we can be quite creative in terms of that stuff. But there is sort of some ground rules. Would you mind kind of going through those too?
Sure thing. Maybe I can just share my screen.
Sure.
Okay. So basically can you see the screen?
I can do indeed, yes.
Cool. Basically, a prompt engineering tool is just a way to send information to whatever AI model you are using in an organized way. You are just, it's like if you were using the chat, but here you can break your prompts, tweak it in a really easy way using a tool like this.
And
So
this tool is called PromptMeus, is it?
PromptMeus. Yeah,
PromptMeus. That's hysterical. I
yeah.
love it. That is so clever. Yeah, and I see basically what it's done. This looks a lot like the very, very earliest days of ChatGPT. I guess it was 3, when it popped up, because there was all this weird kind of like dashboardy stuff with numbers and stuff. And I was like, whoa, what's this about? It still
Yeah.
feels a bit engineering, kind of thing. But yeah, talk us through it. This is cool.
Yeah, it can look a little bit scary the first time that you arrive to the website. This one that I'm showing right now is one example. These are all just examples, not my real work from the blog post. So
Okay.
this one is the job description one, and it looks confusing and weird. But actually, what you have here, if you break it down, it's simple. And after the first time, it becomes really easy to understand what each component is.
Okay.
I'm just going to maybe quickly show you this one, and then I prepared another one, an onboarding that maybe we can build together if that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So this one, you can see here that you can always pick a model. You have several models, Perplexity, OpenAI, etc., and the provider, sorry, and then the model. And the model, there are, for instance, for OpenAI, you have GPT 3.5, GPT 4, etc. You
Wow.
do have to connect your API keys that you can get, for instance, on the OpenAI website. And then here you have the cost per token, like per certain amount of characters, how much is going to cost.
Okay.
But like it comes really cheap. For instance, until now with all of these completions, I spent 25 cents.
So,
It's not like
explain to me too, explain to me, what is a token?
a token is just like a group of characters that are submitted and then received,
Okay.
submitted to the AI model and then received. And these have costs because the AI model runs this group of characters called a token, and it's like cents.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a cost to run this.
But it's minuscule is the point. But
Yeah,
nonetheless, you still
yeah.
have to kind of determine what that is, because yeah, at some point someone's going to pay for this, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's always a matter of evaluating how much time things are saving you, and if you think like company-wide is, if your employees are not spending time in debt, you are saving costs. It's always this kind of strategic thinking that the companies need to
Yeah.
do.
Return on investment stuff, right? Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, for this one, I just gave it a system message. This is the same message option that you can use in, for instance, ChatGPT, but you can
Okay.
also leave it empty. And then create a job description for the following position. And you can see here that I have several positions, right? This is a data set. If I pick this one that it's executive assistant, it's going to run the prompt for the executive assistant position. But then I want to run the prompt again for the engineer position to create a job description. I could just click on this.
Okay.
And yeah, and how you create these options is by creating a data set. So that I have it here. I'm going to show a live example soon, so it's going to be easier
Okay.
to
That makes sense.
follow.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And then, yeah, in this case, I gave it the structure. This is a very simple example of what I want. I want a position name, location, job summary, etc. And I gave additional instructions. I want that some parts are empty, and then that the key responsibilities list 7 responsibilities. So this is the interesting part of using a prompt engineering tool is that you can keep on tweaking. and changing your prompt really easily. So if I want, I could say list at least 8 responsibilities, right? And then it should, let's see if it works,
Okay.
but it should run with 8 responsibilities. So this is one of the interesting features. Okay.
So this is
here
kind
you
of cool. I
have
mean,
it.
because all of that now just came from a couple of very, very basic instructions. You told the computer this is
Yep.
what I wanted to know, and this is the the job description I want you to write, and here's very, very vaguely a structure in terms of how it is I want you,
Exactly.
and then boom. Where did it
Yeah,
get all this stuff
exactly.
from? You know what I mean? Like, how did it know that a Salesforce engineer would be responsible for developing about Salesforce solutions, obviously? But you know what I mean? Like all the different kind of nuanced elements seemingly just came out of the ether.
Yeah, it's just like it would be the same as if you were putting this exact, like in the preview, this exact prompt on ChatGPT.
Okay.
It's exactly the same. This is using the API key, it's communicating, sending to ChatGPT this prompt, and then receiving the answer.
Okay.
And this answer is based on AI, so based on the data that the model was trained on.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. And is it scraping? Like, so it really depends on what tool you use, right? We're using OpenAI's ChatGPT 4, which was trained with a data set up to a certain date, right? And whereas other tools like Gemini, which is Google's version of it, is actually open and plugged into their existing real-time, kind of access to anything on the web. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, if you wanted to use Google AI, I do not have, like you have here, the Geminis. I do not have the API key. I only have it for OpenAI.
Okay.
But basically, as long as you have the API key, you can just run whatever model you want.
Right. And this API key is important, right? We keep mentioning API.
Sure.
What is API?
It's just again, I'm not a technical person.
No, I know exactly. But it is, yeah, it's like a protocol, isn't it? That basically says
Yeah,
like
exactly.
this allows you to kind of communicate with different types of computer systems and things of that nature. But I think if I understood it correctly, and you tell me if I have this right or not, but I think the selection of an API key basically kind of firewalls your activities off a bit from the rest of the web, which was a bit of a mistake, I guess, early on when people were just launching all sorts of like core intellectual property into ChatGPT to kind of bug fix code and all sorts of things. It suddenly realized, oh my God, we've just uploaded our primary proprietary code to the entire internet. And now they fix that by having a simple box that says click here and we'll assign you an API key that is yours, and that's therefore this is your data from here on out. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. So from what I read, I would still recommend that people don't put extremely sensitive data in any AI tool.
Agreed.
But from what I read, when you use the API key, this data is not even used for training purposes, if I'm not wrong, from the last thing that I read. Whereas the data, if you are not an organization user, if you are an individual user, I think your data in ChatGPT can be used for training purposes.
I see.
So I would again be careful, especially if you are an individual user, what kind of data you are putting there.
Yeah. So just to be clear, as an HR professional, don't upload like your payroll sheet with everybody's names and salaries and everything else. That is a true nightmare. Having said that, if you do want to kind of do some kind of a project, you can simply anonymize that data, right? And basically, kind of play with numbers and things of that nature, a code that only you understand and can decipher. That would be sort of the way forward with this. But yeah, do not upload anybody's personal information whatsoever, because you'll quickly find yourself afoul of GDPR and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Cool.
Would you like me to show how to create an onboarding message for new employees?
I would love that. I think that'd be amazing.
Okay. So I have it prepared on the side, otherwise it would take me a little bit longer than we want. Here I'm going to use the ChatGPT Turbo, like this. I think it's the last updated version. I don't know that we have here. This is the cost. This is like the maximum tokens that could be the length of this completion is just to control costs. The temperature feature is something that I do use. So if you have a temperature that is closer to 0, your results will be more predictable, closer to the data of the training data of the model. If you have something closer to 1, it's going to be more creative. If you have like 2 or I don't know, more, it's going to be just gibberish and
It's going to
you
be
cannot understand
perfect
anything.
hallucination. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So for this one, let's go with 0.5. This is another set that is kind of like an alternative to temperature, and these ones I never explored, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So
well, I think
for
that,
the
you know what
user
that was about. Sorry to interrupt real quick. Frequency penalty. Like, sometimes you get a return from, some kind of a prompt that you're doing, and there's sort of like these repetitive sentences or repetitive words that are used often, kind of over and over again that sound very obviously like AI. You know what I mean? Like a robot that just is stuck on a repeat kind of thing. I think that's what the frequency, and I forgot what the pres penalty is. The present penalty, I have no idea. But anyway. But anyway, no, it's just fascinating that's kind of how these things are structured. You're kind of telling the computer, go away and gather up all this fascinating data that would take me days to kind of search on LinkedIn, on Google search and things of that nature, and try to piece together. Go find that stuff in a matter of seconds, and then kind of arrange it in this particular way. And oh, by the way, don't repeat words. Sound a lot more natural and human, as opposed to sounding like a computer. I mean, in essence, that's kind of what you're instructing it, to kind of do, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, you can really see that some people, when they start to use AI, especially to write blog posts or anything like text, you can see there's always the same words in all of these blog posts. So yeah,
Yep.
I guess this is a good option to use.
Yeah, no, indeed.
So let's start with a task. The task would be for the prompt to generate an employee personalized onboarding plan, an email with this. So I can just call it task. I'm also going to change here the name to onboarding email. So one thing that I like about this is that you can organize, you can be really organized, you can create projects and then inside name your prompts. So for me, it's an advantage in comparison to ChatGPT, where you have all
list.
of the
just a
I
think
list.
the only organizational component to it is what date it was created. That was literally it.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's a feature that they will introduce at some point, but for
I'm
now,
sure they will do. Yeah, it feels like they're kind of on top of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Then let's go with the email structure. And here I'm going to show you one feature, which is the variables. So like email structure. So when you have here employee name and here team name and job title position. Oh, sorry. Position. This is creating the possibility of using variables for your prompt. And what this means is that now you can see here these variables section. So if I wanted to run this email for different employees, let's say first I want to run it for Albert with the job title finance assistant, etc. Basically, you can then run it again by changing just the variable here.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
All right. So if I run over and over again, just have it whip up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Let me just put like the manager. Let's call just some random.
Yeah, just pick.
Things. Yeah. Okay. So we have here a quick email structure, which is basically welcome. Then it asks schedule some orientation sessions, a list of required readings, assign a mentor buddy from the same department, and say that if they have any questions about this, they can reach out to us.
Okay.
Which is a typical onboarding message. And then I'm going. So we have here that they should assign a mentor or buddy from the same department, right? But how does it know what mentors are?
Yeah.
I'm going to create a data set with all of the mentors. So,
clever.
and let me do, for instance, the R&D team. And then I'm going to do the finance team, and you can add as many as you want.
Okay.
Just
So this is
here
it's kind
somewhere.
of like creating a drop-down menu, isn't it? Sort of thing.
Yeah, basically it's creating kind of, it's again the concept of variables again, but while here I can change them directly here in this one, they will be, so if I'm going to add the prompt here, they will be stored in the prompt.
Okay.
I'm going to give the instruction directly in the prompt too, to make this easier, using this prefix and suffix options. So I want to say for the mentors, randomly select one of the following options. And then if I have finance picked, it will select one random person from these ones. And if it's R&D, one from these ones.
Okay.
And then just, yeah, doing. And you can see, let me. You can see how it's going to look here in the preview, this part of the text, basically.
Got it.
Okay. So now I have here the mentors, and finally, let's just add the tone of the email. I always like to add this to make sure that it matches the tone that we use in the company. And finally, I'm just going to ask it to just add the output by saying for it to create the email. So basically, you don't have to do this part.
Okay.
So let's just execute it like this to see what it gets, and then if we need to make any adjustment. Okay. So basically, this is now communicating with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is returning this result.
Got it. Now
So this would be.
Go ahead. So this is the email that Albert will see. Is that the idea?
Yeah, exactly. This would be the email that we could, for now, copy from this. Just go ahead and copy and send it. But it would, in the future, for instance, this app, but probably all other apps too, will be integrated, for instance, with Gmail, etc. And it makes things even easier because you can directly send it. For instance, using Zapier again, you can directly send the result of a prompt to whatever tool you need it in, for instance, Gmail in this case, or other email provider.
Okay.
So let me just, now would be the part where I would read the result and see if I wanted any tweaks. So for instance, let me just create here a quick instruction saying this. I want to say, do not include a location in the orientation schedule. For instance, I don't want that this bit goes. Always start with hi. In this case, it started, but sometimes it starts with dear, which in some companies, it's not, you don't use dear a lot.
Right.
And for the orientation, calculate and mention the final date. In this case, it did it properly, but because it can be sometimes with AI, it can be a little bit unpredictable. So things that you want clear instructions, it's just better to spell them. So yeah, now I would execute and see how happy I was with the result. If I was not happy, I would tweak it again. And once it was good to go, for every new employee, I would just need to come here, change the employee name, change the title, etc., and have it again.
Interesting. Very cool. What those little, the way that it came out with those asterisks, in, before orientation schedule and after, is that what would show up in the email as well? Did you do that intentionally?
I think it's just bolding, but I could
Oh,
also just say like no bolding or anything if I don't want it.
I get it.
It would really depends on if we were integrating with an app that would not recognize the asterisks. Maybe better not have them there as
Gotcha.
bolding. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so it's kind of code for bolding. I get it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Fascinating. Cool. And then you got URL linkages basically that plug people into all the things they need to go and access. And yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. And then you're
And
off
I
to the
think that
races. Yeah.
yeah, and if you are working with a team, you can always share your prompt with your team. You can have a team account and just have another person tweaking it or changing the prompt as needed. And it doesn't have to be always the same one.
Okay. So fascinating. So that literally took you all of, I don't know, call it 6 or 7 minutes to kind of literally show somebody who's never seen it before how the thing
Yeah,
works. And if you think then, if you had to have written out, even if you cut paste the body of the message, which is tricky because it may or may not apply to each individual, but you got a list of, I don't know, 10 people starting, the following Monday. That's going to take you probably a couple of hours to kind of get all that stuff done and kind of emailed out and followed up on. But let's call it an hour. But basically, you've already, just to kind of understand the scope of it, you've already saved something like 90% of the time it would normally otherwise take you, because you could just now kind of do click, 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 click,
yeah,
and set, loads these up and then send them off. And then to your point, if you have a connector to a tool like Zapier, Zapier is fascinating. Everybody talks about it. Very few people know what it is, but basically it's a connector tool that basically allows
yeah,
you to integrate multiple different types of systems. And what's fascinating about that is that you can then set up your AI tool to actually become not just sort of an AI large language model for this sort of thing, generating written word, but you can actually create what they call a task agent. So you can basically tell your AI tool, once these things are written, connect with my Outlook account and actually send these things out under my name, at 4 o'clock this afternoon, kind of
yeah,
thing. It's a similar kind of thing. And of course you can use Zapier for a lot more complicated stuff, but that's what the sort of basis for a lot of the hype and excitement around AI is that it doesn't just generate some really clever, kind of writing at a very, very short pace of time, but it actually can start to automate all sorts of different systems, not just HR, of course. It could automate finance stuff and supply chain and sales and, I mean, marketing, you name it. It can have
yeah.
impact on all sorts of things. It's obviously not as simple as all this, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that there's the cliche that then it frees up people's time to focus on the important things. But I do, at least in my personal experience, I do see that as being the case. Not having to do repetitive tasks and spending that time has allowed me the time to focus on more, in my case, what I like to do, more strategic thinking about like people strategy. So I do, and learning about these areas. So I do think
Mm.
it's good, um, as we have it now, it's good to use these tools.
It sure is. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So now we've learned a bit about what prompt engineering can do to kind of like gen stuff up. What other kinds of applications, do you see, tools like this and in AI basically helping HR take care of? I mean, just give me a laundry list.
I would imagine, besides tasks like this, also integrating it with Slack or so to answer employees' questions about like how many holidays do I have left, and this kind of like questions that the models or the tools can just read the database and then answer based on this, rather than having to have a person going through all the software that HR uses, and seeing what the answer is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that one is a big use case. Just, and also having like a chatbot with a potential new candidates. That could
Sure.
be also an interesting thing. People that are trying to apply and they just have some easy questions. That could possibly be interesting,
Yeah,
more
no,
on like the
absolutely.
hiring side.
Yep, absolutely. It's truly truly fascinating. I mean, I had a bit of fun with it because I was blown away initially when a lot of the stuff started coming out, and there were one or two webinars I attended, typically by vendors, who were sort of like, "Well, look what we can do," and there was an illustration of the creation of an HR chatbot, right? And the
Mm.
guy was showing, excuse me, was showing us with his tool open. He goes, let me show you what we can do. We can basically ingest, which is, I guess, the terminology for taking data and kind of putting it into a large language model. We can have it ingest the entirety of your employee handbook, every policy, every process, every kind of approval requirement, and everything else. We can basically upload that in a matter of minutes into this tool. That will then become, and by the way, that could be structured and unstructured information. It didn't need to be written in a particular format or anything like that. It just literally would take everything and just kind of pull it in, obviously make sense of it, through some kind of a magnificent process in the background. And then basically he turned around and said, and to your point, is a really good illustration. He said, well, let's think about the employee journey here. So my name is Bob, and Bob basically wants to figure out how many days does he have left in terms of his holiday accrual for the rest of the year. So he just goes on Slack and he says, hey, so and so, based on the bot's name, Sherry bot. Hey, Sherry bot, how many days do I have left in my accrual? And it says, well, you have 5 days left unused holiday. And they just wrote back very casually. He said, okay, well, I'm thinking about taking some holiday round about the Christmas time frame. And the bot comes back and says, oh, that's great. That's a great time to take a holiday. When do you think you might be taking it? And he wrote back, I'm not sure. I want to make sure that there's plenty of availability and coverage during this period within my department. But can you go and suggest what days then would be the best days for me to take off? And that was it. That was like the end of the instruction. And the computer, the language model went back and kind of obviously is interfacing directly with the core HR tool, the HCM tool.
Mm.
It basically said, well, kind of taking a look at everybody else's vacation schedule during this time for what's been proved already. It looks like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday you get off as holidays. And possibly then the following Monday would be the perfect days for you to take off. Would you like me to set that up for you? And Bob was like, yeah, brilliant. Click yes. And then it automatically then went back into the system, right? And notified the manager. The manager looked at it, approved it, knowing full well that obviously it wouldn't interfere with coverage. And then Bob got a message back saying, right, that's all done for you. Anything else I can help you with? And it was like over and over again. You can think of so many use cases for this.
Yeah.
And if I could, I just wanted to share something too, because there's some sort of more expansive use cases beyond it being sort of a task agent for you. But if I could just kind of share my screen and just kind of show you what I created. So this is the window basically you get to when we're kind of like playing around with ChatGPT. And it's a lovely, simple user interface, so much better than it was early days. And for fun, I had actually created my own GPT just for fun. And I created one called HR Expert Companion. Now, I didn't pick the name. The system actually went and looked for names and came back with a suggestion and had this all set up. And then gave me a strapline, friendly yet authoritative guide on HR matters. And then kind of put 4 kind of suggested, kind of prompts that were kind of pre-engineered in here just to get people thinking. But I just wanted to, it didn't take me long to set up. I think it took me literally all of 5 minutes to kind of like build out the parameters and kind of tell it what I didn't want to kind of address and what I did want to address and what I wanted it to be an authority on, which is fascinating. And so I created this HR bot. And what's cool is that it can access anything that's on the web. So I can say, for instance, as I don't have to tell it what it is because it already knows what it is, which is quite handy. But as an HR executive contemplating the several redundancies in our UK office, can you please tell me what I need to be thinking about from a legal perspective before I make these decisions, right? Which is kind of a heady offering, but you click go, and it basically instantaneously scans. This better work. It instantaneously, kind of scans everything it needs to know off the web relative to it kind of existing in current UK employment law, and basically says, like, here are the sort of big open issues that are really kind of challenging. And immediately it's like hitting me with all sorts of stuff. Gosh, there's like a whole process I got to go through here. There's notifications to make, there's notice periods, redundancy pay, alternative employment options. Oh my God, like this is going to be a lot harder than I thought it would be. I had better be careful.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so that's the kind of brilliant tool and kind of coach. And sometimes it's going to hallucinate here and there, but typically not with stuff like this. It's not going to make things up because there are so many different sites that already speak to this. It's pretty clear, how to get it. But that's the kind of thing you can play with this, and you can build. I have a number of them. I think I created one for people management, one for career coach activity and things of that nature, and it's fun. It's really quite powerful. It's really quite interesting, and feels like it can be a real power companion, for you. It's not going to replace anything. But if you embrace this stuff and you understand the concepts behind it and not be afraid of it, you will also then be able to kind of explore other tools. And the next layer up in terms of kind of HR human interaction is going to be this notion of talent intelligence, which is, again, kind of moving to a skills-based model of understanding what everybody in the organization knows at what level of proficiency. And then you can start to do all sorts of magical things in terms of how it is you target recruitment, how it is you create personalized onboarding experiences and things, how you set goals for that person, how do you basically get them on sort of a performance and development path in a much more synchronized and data-driven way than has ever been done before. So it's a fascinating new era, obviously, for HR, and not to be ignored. Please don't. Like I said, AI won't replace you, but people who know AI and embrace AI might. So be conscious about that. But Helena, that was super interesting. I really appreciate that. So you could basically, for all the documentation that we have in HR, you could arguably just have multiple prompts to kind of take care of all that stuff. And once you set those things up, it's just fully automated, more or less, isn't it? It's point and click.
Yeah, I would say that the main consideration then is AI is going to read just the information that it has, right? So it's still important to have someone making sure that if a policy changed, the documentation is updated so that AI can read actual data. For instance, for that chatbot that you were mentioning, that you can ask how many holidays I have, but you can also ask what's the maternity leave policy. If there's an update, you have to have someone making sure that they update the documentation.
Which could be as simple as literally uploading a document to, say, GPT-4.
Exactly.
And you're like done.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's a partnership between people and AI to ensure that it works the best way possible.
Yeah, very cool. Good. Any last parting thoughts or pieces of advice for HR professionals who are considering the plunge?
Just don't be afraid to try, especially low stakes things. And if it's high stakes, always check, for instance, you just ask for a procedure on ChatGPT, you get the results, then you can run it in another prompt or even just do a Google search just to ensure. And this way you have kind of like, you feel safer that the mistake won't be high stakes. But try things, because this is evolving so fast that it's better to be part of it and take advantage of it.
So yeah, totally agree. And you're not going to break anything. That's the fascinating thing.
No.
Unless, again, if you took like hyper proprietary information and shared that across without an API key or whatever the case, yeah, that's dangerous. But you don't have to do that, of course. But you're not going to break the tool. It's not going to yell at you.
No.
If anything, you can actually, this is a weird thing too, is that it's really introspective. Like you can actually write a prompt and then ask ChatGPT, what would make this a better prompt? You know what I mean? And it's amazing.
Exactly.
It'll come back with
exactly.
just makes it's just like having like three brains just surrounding your own brain. It's like, oh, I didn't think about that. Well done. Kind of thing. So there's some really kind of nifty, kind of fun, clever things you can do with it. But do embrace it, because to your point, Helena, it's breakneck speed stuff. This is like the weirdest pace of innovation I think I've ever seen in my life. And maybe it's going to get even, well, I'm sure it will get worse and worse, because now we're basically not worse and worse, faster and faster. Because basically AI at some point will be able to make itself more interesting, more capable, and suggest new and different ways to configure itself. Not to create some kind of like a sci-fi dystopian, kind of existence, but just listening to like what DeepMind was able to do just recently. They've just announced that they now can literally, kind of formulate in digital format every protein that's ever existed, kind of thing, and basically kind of like show that's three-dimensional, characteristics. And why is that important? Well, basically, those are the building blocks for every aspect of our existence, physical existence. And so in terms of looking at that, and then also looking at abnormal and dysfunctional, shapes and proteins and so forth, they can almost instantaneously start to generate medicines and all sorts of fascinating therapies and remedies to kind of address things that we thought were just unaddressable forever. And now they're playing with DNA and all sorts of things. So I mean, it's like the level of crazy, wow, and smart that AI is creating is just next level. So this has been a fascinating deep dive, Helena. I really appreciate your precious time. It was very kind of you to take us on this journey, and you're an inspiration to us all. And I suspect we'll keep seeing more blogs and cool examples coming out from you. Is that a fair assumption?
Possibly, yes. If my work allows it, the workload, yes.
Right, exactly.
I will.
Exactly. Cool. Well, thank you again. And like I said, we'll go ahead and post this probably on YouTube, and I'll put a link to Helena's blog as well there, so you can kind of see what she's up to. But thank you very much for listening. If you have any further questions or would like to get in touch, just Jeff@bigbearpartners.com. It would be great to connect with you and chat with you more about it. But thank you, everybody. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you.